Hey everyone, you're listening to Talk Recovery Radio. In studio, Darren. We got Nathan here. He's going to be doing his personal story. Just want to do a shout out. New Year's Eve tickets go on sale next week. Paper. They're already on Eventbrite. It's called Rejuvenate. It's a fundraiser for Recovery Day BC. So come to the New Year's Eve dance, clean and sober, ring in the New Year's, substance free. And yeah, Nathan, you nervous to be on the show?
No.
No? Okay.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. So I'm going to just go into the PRA, okay, Darren?
Festival dedicated to highlighting the power of podcasting is here in Vancouver. Join us November 8th to 10th for the Vancouver Podcast Festival, presented by Doxa Film Fest. Vancouver Podcast Festival
Okay,
tickets and
microphones going
passes
on.
are on sale now.
And welcome back to Talk Recovery. Welcome viewers from Facebook land. That was 25 Miles, Edwin Starr, a little soul for you. Stay tuned, we got little Prince coming up to the end of the show as well. One of my favorite times of the day here Thursday during the show is our personal stories. And we have Nathan A. in the studio with us today. Welcome, Nathan.
Hey.
It was funny because we were just asking if you were nervous to be on the show to tell your story, and you're like, no. And I mean, I think and I hope that speaks to our show and the topic and the fact that more people are willing to share their story and talk about this thing that was always just an embarrassment and a shameful part of their lives. So let's just, put that over there in the box and move on. So again, we always appreciate anybody willing to come in and share their story. So let's just start with a little bit about you. How old are you? Where are you from?
I'm 26 years old. I grew up in Clearwater, BC. It's like a little small town on the way to Alberta. I've kind of moved around the interior a bit. I lived in Williams Lake for a while and Grand Forks, and then the Lower Mainland, like Vancouver, and now I'm living in New West.
Right on. Well, welcome to town. Okay, so 26 years old. I guess I have to still call him a young buck as well. There's been a lot of young bucks in here.
Yeah, there is.
Never mind. So how did it start? Let's just start from the beginning.
Well, I don't know. Since like a really young age, I guess I always felt kind of like different. I've been struggling with weight since like I can remember. So that was the thing. Like I always really didn't feel comfortable and like kind of like hated the person that I was, and so I used things like eating before I ever used drugs was one of the things I used to like make myself feel better. And then so like when I did eventually use drugs, like I think the first time was when I was 12 years old. It kind of was like this thing, like I just felt like good for the first time, right? Like I felt comfortable in my own skin, and it was kind of like I found like the answer to like I was like, this is what I need to do, like this is what I finally feel good, right? And then I kind of fit into that group of people, and like it just felt good to like be a part of something for the first time. And so it really just like it was like a snap, like boom, like I found what I need to do, and I just got into like this groove of this is what I'm gonna do, and like no matter what anyone else says, like I'm gonna continue to do it, which led to a lot of issues like with my parents and stuff, obviously, like throughout high school and stuff like that. Like they would tell me like can you like stop sneaking out, like stop doing this or that, and I was just like, no, like you're just trying to stop me from having a good time, right? Like I know what I'm doing. And it was just like it was a pretty big mess, like right from the beginning. Like it sucks like looking back and being like, oh man, if I had just listened to a couple of the people and like what they told me to do, like life would be different today, right? But that's just
like
not what happens.
What was told to you? What people?
Like teachers in school, like, oh, like you have so much potential, like you're a smart guy, like just put some effort into this instead of like, like skipping class and like smoking weed and stuff like that. Why don't you like come to class and like try hard? And I was like, no, like I know what I'm doing. Like I'm just gonna like cook or something after high school. And then my parents, same thing. Like they believed in me from the beginning, right? And I just thought I knew everything from like a really young age, and it just led to me like pretty much ruining my whole early childhood and on to like my early adult life too.
It's amazing if we hear that quite often, and it's part of my story too. Like, why is it that you know, with if so many people believe in us, right? Why is it that we don't believe in ourselves? And I mean, I guess that's sort of the you know, the question of the day. You know, when that happens, you know, when we start to think negatively about ourselves, and when we start to, you know, believe that that we don't have the potential that others see in us, and you know, to get that dialogue going in other ways. But another thing you mentioned, you know, the food being something that was the beginning of addiction, but doesn't come with that sort of social aspect or sense of belonging. I mean, there's not like you're not hanging out after high school with four guys eating Big Macs, right? But if there's a doobie going around, there's always, you know, that social aspect of it. Was that part of the draw?
Yeah, well, like, that was the thing, is like with the food, it kind of isolated me even more, right? Because I felt different than everyone, like being overweight and stuff. So when like drugs were introduced, it was just kind of like, okay, this is it. Like, other people are doing it, and it was like kind of cool, I guess, and like to me at least, and to some of the people that I was hanging out with. So it definitely seemed like what I wanted to do. Like, it was like the answer, and and everything else just seemed like a lot of work, and like I just have like a lazy personality, I guess, and it was kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna take the easy road and like see where it takes me, and obviously it wasn't the right choice.
And was your first use of substances, were they like considered the you know, the highly addictive substances, or were you talking pot?
It was definitely weed was like the main thing for me throughout high school, and alcohol for sure. It was like what was acceptable. Like a lot of people were doing it. It was just like, but it, like I even using that stuff, like I knew I was different than all my friends that were doing it, because like I would always be wanting to do it, and they'd be kind of like, dude, like what's wrong? Like just chill. And I was just like, no, like let's do more. Like let's drink every weekend. And so like even at a young age, like I kind of knew like something was different with my mentality around like everything, pretty much. Like anything that made me feel different, it was like I wanted to be doing like it more than most people, like anyone normal, I guess.
Yeah, like you I mean, you can argue that, you know, weed isn't the most addictive drug. It's less addictive than heroin or crack cocaine, for sure. But you're describing that part where, you know, drugs are the most important thing.
Yeah.
Whatever drug you're talking about, it's the most important thing. Okay? So what was, you know, what was some of the things that drugs became more important than, I mean, graduation, jobs, opportunities?
Oh, yeah. Like I always told myself, I was like, I love my family so much, and like that didn't matter anymore. Like I completely, like I just moved out when I was like 16 years old or 17 years old or something like that, and I completely shut them out. So like that value was just like gone. And like I always thought I was like a hardworking guy, and like that same thing, I barely did anything when I was using, and just like everything, like nothing really mattered as long as I had like a little bit of something, you know what I mean? And like, and by the end, I always was left in the same place, like feeling really like desperate and alone, and being like, oh, like how can I change? And then like I would tell myself, because I was so trapped in that like isolated negative thinking, that it's like, no, this is your life, like this is what you deserve for being the person that you've been, and like just all this stuff that like kept me trapped in it, thinking like there's no solution, when in reality like I just had to like reach out, but like I just never did, you know. I just kept like pushing on, like I can get through it, like as long as I find this next good job, or is like I get like a nice place, like I'll make more friends, or like it just craziness, like it never really made sense.
Yeah.
But like I just kept convincing myself that I could figure it out eventually.
So after all of those, you know, sort of attempts at changing jobs, changing places, changing groups of people, what was the first time that you actually sought help?
Well, I was living with one of my best friends, and it kind of blew up. Like I did a bunch of stupid stuff, like punching holes in walls, and like I just burned it down essentially. And we got in this huge fight, and they all just sat me down and was like, man, like you gotta go to treatment or like get help. And I was like, screw you guys, like what are you talking about?
But this is other people that are using?
Yeah, but like they could stop, you know what I mean? Like I would just continue going, and they like, I don't know, it's hard to say, but yeah, so that was the time where I said I was gonna go get help, and then I just like moved to Vancouver with another friend that was using, and I just kept it going, and until I had nothing. Like I had no money, no job. I was living on buddy's floor, and I finally kind of reached out to my family. Like I'm pretty much homeless. I got no job. Like, can you guys help me? And it was my my aunt Tammy that took me in, and it was her advice that really led me to recovery.
What'd she say?
She just said, like, we're not gonna keep helping you if you don't go to treatment. And I was kind of like, okay, like I'll do whatever it takes. But in the back of my mind is like, I'm still trying to figure out like how I can get a job somewhere just to keep it going. But yeah, it's like she had helped me a couple times before, but I wasn't very serious. But this was the time where it was like, yeah, like I do need to change something. But like my self-centeredness and like my addiction was still like real strong, and I figured out a way to get like another job, burn that down again, and ended up I was living in my friend's dad's garage for like a week, no job, same thing, like burned it all down again. And this time she's like, okay, like we're literally not going to let you even come into our house unless you like call a treatment center or like go to a detox and get help. So that was my rock bottom for me. It was like, yeah, like what else? Like I'm living in someone's garage, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just like I broke down so many barriers along the way, and like I used to like judge so many people for doing like the things that I was doing, you know what I mean? And like I kind of took a look at myself and I'm like, I don't even know who I am anymore, right? And it was finally like that realization that like, yeah, maybe I do need to go to treatment. I had no idea what that would look like, but I was definitely like ready.
And so what happened from that point? Like, did somebody find a place for you? Did you have to go to detox? Did was it a struggle to find a place to go?
My aunt Tammy did like she took me in, she made a bunch of phone calls, researched a bunch of places, and she found the door in New Westminster, the last door, and it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Like we had to get onto social assistance because like my family doesn't have very much money, and so I got onto a government bed, and it was about 2 weeks, and I got into treatment, and yeah, it was like insane. Like I had like this idea that I'd be like trapped in a room with like doctors, like and like counselors and like all this stuff, and they would like tell me just like fix me, you know what I mean? And I was just so happy when I did get down here and I kind of like seen what recovery actually was, because it's like amazing, you know what I mean? It was like I don't know, I finally found somewhere where I wasn't using drugs, and I actually felt inspired. I actually felt like this could work. Like I was like, oh my god, like there's like male role models that like I looked up to that were like living positively and like they're like good people, and I was just like, yeah, I want to be those people instead of like looking at like drug dealers or like other bad influences and being like, I want to be like those guys. It was finally like I had that influence in my life that was like, yeah, like you can live a good life, you can be happy, and you can help other people. And I was just like, it just blew my mind a little bit, because I always felt like I had something inside me like to help other people with, or that I could like reach my potential, but I never had a way. And this was like the first time where I kind of was like, oh, like I think this might be the way, you know what I mean?
Well, and that you spoke of that potential again, like perhaps the potential that your parents or that teacher saw, you know, it wasn't really defined to you at that spot, just that you're better than what you're doing right now, yeah. And yet it's still an unknown. Like, what do you mean potential? I mean, now you're describing, you know, being of service and offering, you know, hope to other people. Like, who knew?
Yeah. Well, like in addiction, I always talked about like, oh, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna start losing weight, like I'm gonna start going to work every day on time, like I'm gonna get all my debt paid, like things are gonna change, you know, and then like nothing changed.
Way to shoot high. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna reach my potential of being on time to work.
Yeah. But like nothing, you know what I mean? Nothing changed, and then like getting into recovery and seeing like it kind of gets laid out. It's like there's so much underlying stuff you have to deal with before you can actually make any of that kind of change. And it was just like, I don't know, it was one of the best feelings I ever had, being like, I can actually do it. Like I just got to do what these people are telling me to do, and like it'll work.
What was the hardest thing of getting clean? Or
I think just taking a look at myself, like all my shittiness or negativeness or like whatever you want to call it, like just so much stuff from my past being brought up, and like stuff that I kind of like buried, like relationships like between like me and some of my family members, or just everything. Like basically what I kind of realized was everything that happened in my life that was negative was a result of things that I did. And like that was the thing that I had a problem with, was I was always blaming other people. And through writing steps in a 12-step fellowship, it was just like, yeah, you're the problem and you can fix it, but you gotta fix you, right? And it was just kind of like, oh man, this is what I've been avoiding my whole life. But then it was like I had the support because of the community, that I was like, I can do it because I can use these other people to help me, and then I can help them. And it was just really great, right? Like it's just something I never really thought that I could have. So it was like pretty sweet to be like, okay, this is my chance.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can believe you can actually face and get through when you know you're not doing it all by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think that's the biggest component of if you can define what recovery is. It's like, well, recovery is a support and an energy and and people and knowledge and awareness that, yeah, no, things aren't going to be taken away and removed. The pain's not going to be removed from your life. The horrible things that you've done from your past, they're not going to go away, but you will be able to face them.
Yeah. I think one of the main things too was listening to other people's stories and being like, and them sharing things that like I always thought and I never really told anyone. And I was kind of like, oh my god, like these people think the same kind of stuff that I do. And that was the first time I experienced that too, right? Because I always felt different, and I would get to those points of real desperation, and I would try to share like what I'm going through, and no one would understand. Like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, just stop using drugs, or like just figure it out. Like, do the right thing. And it was like, I don't know why. Like, I always make the wrong choice, and it was kind of just like, yeah, because I just didn't have like the right kind of solution, I guess. And just to see other people going through the same thing and them getting through it, like taking multiple years clean and stuff, that was like the inspiration I needed to be like, okay, I can do it too.
Yeah.
And seeing even more like brutal stories, to be honest, like some people coming from like even worse off situations made me realize like, wow, like I'm lucky to have like the family that I had that like gave me everything I needed, and I took a lot of things for granted. And then there's other people who didn't have that, and they're living happily and like staying clean. So it was pretty easy to be like, okay, like there's no excuse, like you can do this as long as you actually like try.
Well said. What's your clean time now?
About 8 months, almost 8 months, on the 24th of November.
Nice and fresh.
Yeah,
Hey?
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
job.
That's pretty good.
Is that the most clean you've ever been?
No, I was almost 18 months clean around last March. Yeah, I relapsed, in March for a week. I figured it out that I could drink socially. That was my plan in my
That's
head.
what you couldn't let go
I
of,
convinced myself that I had been clean long enough that it would be okay, and like I wouldn't use the drugs that I was using before. I would just drink with some of my old friends, and in reality, in the back of my head, I knew it was gonna go bad, but I was still like, we'll see what happens, and like you can
Nathan,
always come back.
note to self: whenever you think, let's just see what happens.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
Stop.
Yeah, that's the insanity, right? Like it's the insanity, because like I had isolated myself enough in recovery that I was getting to that point where my head was telling me all these different things, and I was like conflicted, and I was believing both sides. Like, oh yeah, you can drink socially, but I was like, my conscience is like, no, like you're gonna relapse and you're gonna like ruin everything that you built up to this point. And it was kind of like, like it'll be okay, it was like it's hard to describe, but I'll never forget like the change, like after using for the first time again, having that mentality come back like instantly. Like it was like hearing this voice in my head that I haven't heard for like over a year, and it was terrifying, like this negative, like evil voice in my head, and it's back, and it was like ready to go again kind of thing, and just ready to just shred me down. Like, you disappointed your family, like this is exactly what you were meant to do. I knew you were never going to be able to stay clean, like just instantly. And it was just like, what did I do? Because I didn't think of that, right? It was just like, oh, it's going to be fun. And it was like the worst week. Like, I've never been more anxious, more paranoid, and like the self-loathing, everything just came back like right away, right? And luckily that I did have a pretty good program for that first year for a while, that it was like, yeah, like I can get that back. Like, you just got to go back, like just come back to the meetings and like tell people what happened. And it was only a week, right? So it could have been a lot worse. And I am really grateful. My friend is one of the main reasons that I did come back. He's passed away now, Dougie Fresh. He was the guy I reached out to, and he's just like, just come back. Everyone will take you in, and it'll be okay. And then same thing with the last door. It's like I went up there to let everyone know, because I was an alumni when I relapsed, and they just said right away, like, come back tomorrow, bring your stuff, we'll take you in. And it was just like, there was no excuse. Like, you know what I mean? I had all the help right away.
You figured you'd be dragged through the mud, embarrassed, shamed.
Were you shamed?
Right?
Shamed.
Well, I mean, that's how you're feeling yourself, right?
Yeah,
That's what you're doing to yourself, and it's just like, why wouldn't other people do that to me, right? They're going to show and voice their disappointment. They're going to look at me like I let them down. I mean,
for sure.
Because
100%.
those are somewhat true things, true statements that are, from what's happening. And most people I think that's fair to say most people don't do that. They keep that perpetuating in their mind, and they stay out longer and longer and longer and
Yeah,
longer.
I was on. It could have happened easily. Like I was like really on the fence with even telling anyone. I was ready to just like disappear, kind of like stop talking to everyone. The main thing was like I knew people in recovery would accept me back, but it was just like having to tell my family what happened and stuff, because that was like the hardest thing, because they're just so proud of me for getting clean and stuff, right? So it was just like, oh, like I can't tell them, and like I broke the amends that I made to them and all this stuff. So there was a lot of like different little things, but I couldn't deny the fact that I felt better in recovery, and I had that feeling of like I was able to accept myself, and like I did feel like I had a place. And then as soon as I got loaded, I was like, oh, like, I want that back.
Yeah.
And I knew how to get it back, so that was like one of the main reasons. It's like, oh, you just gotta man up and like take your lumps, and better now than like a year from now, like maybe not even making it. You know what I mean?
So I got one more question, one magic question. If you could do it all over again, would you have gone through the relapse?
Like, what do you mean?
Well,
Like,
most people.
No, 100% no.
Okay.
Like it did give me a few things. Like I built a bigger support group because of it. I've met a lot of people I might not have met, and like it kind of reinvigorated my recovery. But I think I could have stayed clean and just reinvested and got all that kind of stuff through just staying clean and like putting more energy into my recovery. So it's not like I had to go through the relapse to get where I am today. Like it is what it is, and I'm here because I'm here. But it's just like, no, it wasn't the best decision I made. Obviously it was hard, but I don't know, it's a good feeling knowing like there's always a place that you can get the support that you need, right?
Right on. Nathan, thanks for coming in and sharing that story. That's an important message. Really appreciate it, bud.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, this is coming to the end of our show. It's funny because I've been a man of relapse many times, and I never learned a single thing from any of my relapse. Like, I learned so much more in staying clean and facing, the defects and the things that are happening in my life that I don't really exactly want to face. But as I've stayed clean, I learned so much more about myself and what I'm capable of doing. And I've always said that there's never going to be a time in my life where if I'm practicing recovery and I have purpose and I have people depending on me and I'm working on myself, will I ever give any of that up to go have a Bellini's on a restaurant patio, But that's a lot, especially the young people that come in. That's just, it's that question. It's like, oh, can I just like drink regularly, or and it's just like, okay, well, maybe not. But what you are going to do is give up everything that you've worked for to this point. Like that's even if you drink normally for the next 10 years, you still just gave up, like, a lot of what you've worked on and what you've been about and finding that potential in your life. So, well done. Thanks. Thanks all our listeners. Thanks Recovery, Facebook, Talk Recovery. Yeah.
This phone thing, yes.
This has been Talk Recovery, your Thursday show on Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. Giuseppe's got to get closer to the booth here in order to press play for one of the finest songs out there, I think. This is Prince, The Cross. Stay tuned for World Poetry Cafe.
Good job, Darren.
All right. Thanks, Nathan. Take care, buddy. Darren. Thanks for watching Facebook Live. Take care, everyone.